To have you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about why you're running.
Well, I'm Tim Brandon. I come from Kenosha Township. I lived there my whole life. Went to Proctor High School. Graduated in '99. Went to tech school for auto body. I grew up in a family car dealership. We had Chester Park Motors, which was on 14th East and 4th Street for 50, 60 years. Now it's CarQuest Auto Parts. I still own that building. So basically that's how cars have kind of been, unfortunately, my entire life. But so I went to work at Custom Coach Collision out of tech school. About 2 years after that, I actually rented an office, built an office at Custom Coach and rented from my boss and sold cars. I had cars for sale in the lot up in Hermantown. We did that for, I think it was a couple of years, and then moved back down to the building that we owned, into the basement of the building. Did that. I owned a mechanic shop at the same time in the basement. I had taken over, some people may remember, Wally's Service, rented from us for a very long time. So we did the mechanic shop and everything till about '08. My dad passed away, and then of course the economic downturn in '08 hurt a lot of businesses, especially small car dealerships. So at that time I made a decision to lease out that space and kind of back off a little bit. Back in '08, just car dealer wise, the bonding issue was a big problem. Big dealers down the cities were going under, and it was historical that really bonding only cost you a few hundred a year for a couple $100,000 bond. They spiked those rates, and when my dad passed away, the state reissued the dealer's license instead of just removing his name, which made me not a 60-year-old car dealership, a new one. So my bonding went from $300 a year to $10,000. I managed that for about 2 years, and the numbers weren't making sense. They decreased the bond to $8, but that just wasn't making sense financially as a small business owner. So at that time I actually went back. I got offered to go back to Custom Coach Collision, and I actually ended up a couple months later actually stepping into running Custom Coach Collision for my friend that owns it. And I've done that for, I think I did that for 3 to 4 years. I can't really exactly remember the time frame, but and then I chose really recently, about the last 6 months, I had to take over Chester Park Laundromat that's in my building. The 4th Street reconstruction project has really affected the businesses on 4th Street. So after 47 years, he was kind of tired and burnt out, and so I took over that. So basically my time was getting stretched rather thin between having a commercial rental and now a laundromat and trying to work 60 hours a week running someone else's business. So at that time I spoke with him and decided to step down and go do my own thing. So fast forward a few months after that, this kind of all come about. So it's actually good because I'm not working a full-time job at this point, so it gives me more time to concentrate on running for office and learning more about all the issues. I was not a politician. A year ago I was managing a body shop with, obviously, business issues and things of that nature, insurance regulations, stuff like that. I was never overly concerned at the state level, I guess. I'm kind of a product probably of my generation. I'm 35 years old, so.
What made you concerned? Why politics? Why this position?
Well, what actually made me do this, oddly enough, is true story is that I was mowing the grass, came in the house, turned on the TV, and it happened to be on the channel with the legislature on, and it also happened to be the last day. So that TV ended up just kind of staying on throughout the day as I was mowing grass and working on the house, and quite frankly I watched the legislature and how I felt they were acting. On one hand, I believe a lot of people feel that the legislature are, higher utmost standard people, which I'm not saying they aren't, but I don't think anybody can look at that session this year and look at the way the last final minutes went and whether that's appropriate representing our district and our state. I think they need to, I personally just feel that, when you're in that position, whether or not it's an issue between left and right or whatever they want to phrase it as, you're holding a higher position and you should be held to a little higher standard. And and that just kind of sparked my interest. That happened to be not long before the deadline, like May 31st is the deadline. I was driving down the road and I had Wade Friendling's phone number, who ran against her last time, from Googling that while I was watching the session. Happened to call him out of the blue. He was in Nebraska. His parents are ill and not doing any better than they were 2 years ago. And next thing you know, we had lunch, and 3 days later, I put my name on the ballot. So that's really honestly the truth of how it happened. I'm kind of a data nut from running small business my whole life and being involved in small business. I'm a numbers guy. To me, numbers, although numbers can be skewed and manipulated to either view, I do believe that, I mean, numbers don't lie. And as long as we are willing to step back and be impartial and look at what's really happening and try to come up with solutions instead of pushing our own ideas and agendas onto the problem, I think we can accelerate fixing issues and move forward at a better pace.
So if elected, what would your top priorities be?
About a month ago, that would have been a harder question for me to answer.
Yeah.
After looking into things, I feel that at least for my district, there's quite a disparity in a few different general areas, a few issues between certain cities and townships. And I think the job of at least my viewpoint of my job as a legislator is almost like the job of an attorney, is to look at our district, look at the problems, and then sell that, you know, as the defense down at the legislature. Not to just go down and say, well, throw my arms up in the air, it's not fair. Well, that doesn't help anybody. You need to be able to show why it's not fair and also show why it should be fair. There's a story to be told. I think we get caught up way too much nowadays on letters, words, you know, instead of the sentences and stories that actually solve problems. And we get caught up on taglines and one phrase, and then we just browbeat it until, frankly, everybody's tired of it, I think.
Can you offer maybe a specific or two that need to be tackled?
Yeah, a couple specifics, and I printed some stuff for you guys to take with.
Great, thanks.
Like I say, I'm a data guy, so it's taken me a few weeks to compress the hundreds of pages of House Research Committee data into what I feel is kind of understandable. And I have a lot more. I'll be honest, I stretched kind of thin with everything, but there's a copy here for each one of you. Actually, I'll leave these because then the other people would like them. One of the aspects, there you go.
We only need two more, so you can see those.
I'll grab this one because then I can kind of...
We got 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go.
One of the things that I found out that kind of concerned me, to be honest, is local government assistance is a big issue in the state. Some say it should just be eliminated because it's city welfare. I have the belief that it's a $500 million a year program. I don't foresee it going anywhere anytime soon. And specifically when you look at local government assistance, if you happen to look at, I wasn't sure how we talk, so I don't necessarily have them in order. Mine doesn't. The last page, at least, the one with the blue and orange chart, if you got one. Basically, a lot of you may know that the city of Rice Lake, well, the township of Rice Lake became a city in 2013.
Right.
There's some issues where Duluth want to annex them, etc. Were you able to find was your last page? I'll give you this one. That one might be my fallacy. The city of Rice Lake became a city in 2013. The local government assistance program does not favor new cities, basically because it doesn't happen very often. No matter how advanced the formula was, the formula does not comprehend a new city very well, because the way the formula is built, you cannot lower another city's local government assistance theoretically to give to another one, hypothetically, unless it's raised. Which this year they had planned on raising it $20 million, but with the omnibus bill not passing, that didn't happen. The city of Hermantown is an interesting concept because in 2012, the city of Hermantown, I believe it was about $400,000 a year. They're slated in 2017, a confirmed $66,000. And I'd like to be able to go through charts a little bit, but when you get home, you kind of look and see, and you'll understand that basically the city of Hermantown, I kind of feel like was lost. The excuse the city has received down in St. Paul is that, well, you've increased your tax revenue and your tax base, so you don't need that help. But the problem that I kind of foresee in the mayor and a lot of citizens of Hermantown, Hermantown is a very high property tax area. Almost any citizen will tell you they're upset about the value of property taxes. Local government assistance tends to be used a lot to alleviate that strain and that burden. They have, obviously, Mills Fleet Farm, they have put in commercial property. Unfortunately, as I'm digging into it, the data that I'm finding, and I'll have more, I can certainly, if you send me emails, I'll be happy to share that with you as I get it organized. Their budget really has not changed since 2012. It floats between 11 and 12 million dollars. I guess my question pertaining back to the attorney aspect is, if the state's saying, well, you don't need it because you're creating all this base, where's that base? It's there, but it's not, it's not a black and white story. And I believe one of the charts may be, the blue one is actually, it's a comparable population chart. So if you take the city of Hermantown in the middle and you sway it, say, I don't know what I used, 500 or 1,000 people on each side, all those cities have a comparable population. And if you look at the orange bar, you can see how some cities obviously get a lot more money than others. There was one chart that I wanted to print, and printers being printers last night, it decided to die and not allow me to print this. But I will pass this one, or actually I'll leave this one, and hopefully maybe you guys can make a copy for yourselves.
Sure,
but that's off of my data too for the local government assistance, and it shows the top, I believe, top 10 cities, what they get in aid in our district. And you'll see that Rice Lake was slated to get about $5 grand. And the story there is actually they were supposed to get about $5,000, which is pretty dismal. Mary went down to fix that problem, which is a wonderful thing. It needed to be fixed. And if we had passed the omnibus bill, they would receive now, in 2017, $524,000, which is wonderful. But the other question that remains is, Rice Lake is a new city. Their budget, if I remember properly, and don't quote me, is about 1.2 million. It's below 2 million per year. They would have received $524,000. Well, that's a pretty significant jump to your city budget.
Right.
In comparison to Hermantown. I mean, the story is not that Rice Lake didn't deserve it. I believe they did. I just feel that my opponent kind of dropped the ball when she went and testified. I've listened to the audio. She made a small little blip about Hermantown and just kind of walked away from it. I think Hermantown's kind of getting the shaft on that. So city specific, that is one of the things I believe. She's lived there 76 years. She's been their rep for 40 years because they've never been removed from her legislative district. And in talking with people in Hermantown, I feel it's a big issue. And I think, and one of the other things is, like with the data, is I think, I agree with Mary that running for office is a very forgiving thing. I mean, you're doing a community service. I believe Wade stated it's a community service, not a career. The issue with that, and I'll be honest, I even kind of used that the first couple of weeks, is as I've spoken with Mary a few times and talked with her, it was a community service. She has served her community for 40 years. I fully believe that. But I also believe running for office, even my position, as long as I can get this information out there and get people talking about it, even if I unfortunately am not the winner, those are issues that would be brought to light, and hopefully she can help solve those issues for the district. So I mean, it's still, while she's my opponent, we're all here to improve the district, and that's my viewpoint there.
You talk a little bit about the end of the session and the failures of the session. What would you have done differently if you were a lawmaker? What do you think maybe Representative Murphy could have done differently? Or was there anything that could have been done?
Unfortunately, I mean, I am not sure with the fact she's been there 40 years, if there's maybe something more she could have done or not done. I think, you're one of many people. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that I choose to really not. I think people choose to run and they want to sell this story that they can be Superman, go down there and fix everything. You're one of many people. You have to have the skill to be able to talk with people, start conversations, and that's how you get the ball rolling. Being the loudest guy with the biggest fist on the table doesn't do anybody any good or get you anywhere. And as far as the end of the session, from what I've looked into, what I'm disappointed about is, from what my understanding, the House passed a $900 million bill. The Senate also passed a $900 million bill. Unfortunately, in the final minutes in the Senate, Senator Latz proposed a handwritten bill for Southwest Rail. It wasn't in either one, and to be honest, I went through all of the governor's budgets, and it wasn't in any of his proposed budgets. So what disappoints me is that there isn't any coverage of the fact that not I'm not going to say it was the Democrats' fault, but I'm surprised there's not more coverage on the aspect that there was no Southwest Light Rail in the discussion during the entire session, because it wasn't proposed even in the governor's bill, but yet this is the sticking point. And I feel that's very unfortunate for the entire state, because it wasn't something that was being discussed during the whole time. One person and one piece of paper, and unfortunately one signature after the veto, stopped everything. And I think the purpose of the legislature and Senate is to represent the public and the people, and not necessarily one view. And I feel that one view, Southwest Light Rail, made it so all of us lost. And I think that's very sad. And what could I have done? I really don't know, and that's the honest truth. I don't know that Mary could have done anything, but I do know that there's specific people that almost kind of are to blame. And I'd like to see that story actually be told a little better. I mean, a lot of things happen, but in the end, I mean, we only have a few people that really stopped it. I mean, everything was passed. If that amendment hadn't been presented by Latz in the final minutes, they both agreed. Now, whether the governor would have vetoed that, not sure. That's kind of his problem. But, you know, it is what it is. It was supposedly vetoed over a $100 million line problem, but all they talk about is Southwest Light Rail. So I feel there's a lot of disinformation. It really is cloudy. I don't like that, but I think people should just be more straightforward and let's fix the problems.
We want to hit on a couple of statewide issues and get your position on those, and then we'll circle back to some of this. But education, first of all, how can education be improved in the state, including the need to close the achievement gap? What sorts of measures would you push for?
In starting to look into education and the numbers and data, I think everybody hears almost on a daily basis that we need to fund education. We need to fund more education. We have, if you inflation adjust the numbers since '91, we have actually doubled our investment in K through 12 education. I think it was 112% from the one data point I had seen. There is I'm sorry, I apologize, the education gap. There is an education gap in many forms. One of the forms that I've ran across is that the highest, you get paid per pupil, but if you take just the state aid per pupil in our district receives 49% less than the highest 10 schools per pupil. And I'm not saying that those schools don't deserve more per pupil because of race, ethnicity, reduced lunch. I fully understand that you have to invest a little more to get these people to a higher level and get them graduated, get them on to college. But the question for my district personally is, if the whole goal is an equitable education for all, which you hear numerous times, how is that equitable? We do have higher graduation rates, that's wonderful, but the great aspect of that is we have a district full of teachers and schools and schools that are doing an 80 to 90% graduation rate, frankly with half the money the most problematic schools are getting. So what I would like to see is frankly honest discussion. Money is not solving the problem. The problem is a societal level problem. These students, there's something wrong in the troubled schools other than the money being spent per student. And obviously that's, I mean, home life, a lot of other reasons go into creating, and I am not a teacher and I am not, you know, an education professor and an expert, but we've thrown money at the problem. And now I think it's time to step back and be honest about the problem and try to address it. Spending more money, in my opinion, at this point, it's not something, we need data points to, you know, maybe our teachers need to be able to spend a month and go down and look at what's wrong down there. Because obviously we're doing something right. I feel we deserve more per student, but obviously we're doing something right. And I think they should take those schools, districts, and, you know, even if it's one teacher from each district, and let's start a program and find out, let them go down, because people who are doing something right can walk into a room and see things that are wrong instantly. And I think that's, you know, like I say, that's concepts. I mean,
Sure.
That's where I feel and stand.
Tim, where do you stand on twin metals, polymet, the mineral lease agreements?
Well, if I had 3,500 pages of DNR research with me, I would throw it down on the table and I would explain that I am not an expert in mining. If you brought me a damaged car, I could fix it, tell you how much it's going to cost, and probably tell you how much hazardous waste I'm going to produce to do that. Unfortunately, I'm not a miner. I think there's a real problem with legislators, governors, people who are not experts running around acting like they are. I am pro-mining, I'm pro-jobs, but in my opinion, not looking at that 3,500 pages, I mean, the governor basically, I believe, just off his tail, don't even care. Well, they're the experts. Not to mention, I don't know what we paid per page taxpayer money to get that report. You know, you refer to experts to come up with conclusions. I mean, legislators, we're not, the job description doesn't say be an expert in everything. You have people who come and tell you the information so you can make an educated decision. Unfortunately, we seem to be ignoring the concept of educated decision. We're being muddled into the mud with just opinions, and I mean, like the whole Nolan Mills thing. I mean, to me, there's no new information. Every year you hear the same thing. You got people against it, the people for it, but there's no data. There's no one saying, you know, well, this is why. You have the environmentalists saying, well, we can't do it. The water's going to flow into Lake Superior. It's going to be horrible. Very possible. I agree. But let's look at the data and facts and come up with a decision. So I am pro-mining. I'm pro-jobs. On specifics, I pass that along to the experts to inform me of what the best decision is, and I won't pretend to be that expert.
What do you see as the best source of transportation funding? Increasing the gas tax, miles driven tax, other cuts in the budget, combinations, what?
Well, in my research, as far as obviously roads, bridges, and infrastructure, it's a huge concern, especially in Duluth. I have the building on 4th Street and 2 harbors. Everywhere you go, roads. How we got to this point, I'm not exactly sure. But I do know, I believe it is in 81 or 1987 is when we started doing tab fees. And the legislature at that time, in my opinion, kind of made a mistake. It's a 60-40 rule. And if you read it, and I'm pretty confident, I'm sure I've been reading a lot of stuff lately, but it states no more than 60% can be put towards roads, you know, the roads and bridges aspect of it. No less than 40% can go to transportation. So if you think about that concept, they've already decided that we can lower the roads and bridges and stuff, but we can't ever lower transportation. Unfortunately, at that time, I don't think they foresaw the battle between light rail and all this stuff. And unfortunately, that's the transportation aspect of that actually counts for like airports, light rail. It doesn't count for roads because this is the road. 60% is the roads. So I mean, if you look back on that and how much money has gone, you know, light rail and all that, we've lost a lot in that aspect. So I don't know if raising a gas tax or certain fees is the best choice. I'm not absolutely informed on that data at this point, but we have definitely made mistakes in the past that we keep carrying forward. You know, the Met Council has a tremendous budget, and they are not publicly elected. So I mean, they're able to make decisions. That's why Southwest Light Rail and these things become such a large issue. And in fact, now the funny thing is, and we haven't passed the omnibus bill, but now all of a sudden the governor's out saying, well, we could do Southwest Light Rail in another way. So on one hand, not passing a bill is a good thing, because what's funny is all these big projects somehow always end up getting funded. And sometimes that's not always directly out of the taxpayer pocket when we allow that to happen. So yeah, I can't say I have a specific solution for our roads and bridges. We obviously need to start spending more money on it. But we have a lot of issues. Healthcare going up. 47% of our budget now is spent on K through 12. I think 46.5% of all of our tax money is spent on K through 12, and I believe it's 23% on healthcare. So you add those two together, I mean, you only have so much money left. But I think anything we do to passing bills, a tax, a fee, or whatever it may be, it needs to be earmarked just for roads and bridges. It seems like they always try to split it up, transportation. I think we need specific roads and bridges money, and they can't steal from it and rob from it. So
It'd be more of a national issue, but gun rights, of course, are important all over your district, all over northeastern Minnesota. What level of gun control or gun rights do you support? Maybe something against semi-automatic weapons?
I think, and that comes from me, just I'm a normal, ordinary person. The conversation about gun control, I'm obviously pro Second Amendment. I'm from Minnesota. I'm sorry to phrase it that way, but it is what it is. It gets muddled also. An AR-15, AR does not stand for assault rifle. can't remember the name of the guy, but it's the initials of the guy who designed the gun. And it's not an assault rifle 15. It might look like a nasty, mean, horrible gun. I agree. It's a military issue weapon. That's why it was designed. But they fire a .223 round. My hunting rifle, a 308, many people, 30-06, 308, that's a 308 round. It's far larger than a .223 round. They go by size. My hunting rifle is more powerful and dangerous than that AR-15. And the other conversation that comes up last, semi-automatic. An AR-15 in the hands of a public person, I have a friend who owns a couple of them. They are not an automatic rifle. You cannot hold that trigger and it continues to shoot until it's out of bullets. You have to pull the trigger.
But you can't modify them so that they...
You can modify them, but it is against the law to do that. And I think that goes into another thing where we seem to have laws that are current that we won't enforce, but then we come up with a law to fix the fact we don't enforce the law. It's just this weird round table, no matter what it consists of. So, I mean, I'm a firm believer. I don't think you need 100 clip rounds. I don't think you need a lot of things, but the problem with that conversation is once you start limiting it, where does it end? And I can understand that. But I think it takes honest people like us sitting around the table and being honest about the facts and not screaming and hollering, but just listening to each other. And I'm sure as a society we can come up with better solutions or better ideas. The debate's been going on a long time, and I've come to the conclusion that the longer the debate goes on, the less the people involved in the debate actually have fixed anything. Because they're not coming up with talking points that are solving the problem. They're talking about the same stuff over and over again. So that's kind of where I stand. I mean, I'm pro Second Amendment, but I do understand that there should be some limits. But unfortunately, I mean, if you tomorrow we could wave a magic ball and remove all assault rifles or whatever you want to call them from society, they're going to find another way. I mean, they're going to go get a U-Haul truck filled with fertilizer and blow up an entire building. I mean, it's unfortunate. That won't solve the problem that we're in, unfortunately, in my opinion.
I think you touched on this a little bit, but what should the state of Minnesota be doing to encourage economic development and to bolster the economy, especially here in northeastern Minnesota?
I think looking forward, we have to come up with ways to bring new businesses into Minnesota. Unfortunately, the tax structure in Minnesota, I believe we're ranked 6th as highest income tax. We are not, as much as we want to say we're business friendly, in reality, our laws and rules for people who are informed. And when you start talking about big multi-$100-million corporations moving into Minnesota, when they look that they can go to another 48 states and get better tax treatment, you can't blame them. So, and as far as mining and up north, I mean, we have to find new future ways. I mean, we know that eventually things are going to run out, and we have to prepare for that. I mean, we can live in today, but we have to prepare for tomorrow. And I'm a small business owner. I think a lot of rules and regulations can be lightened to help small business. I know I've heard the comment multiple times that the middle class worker is, or middle class workers create jobs. I've heard that numerous times. Well, I've never seen 500 people line up in an empty lot saying, let's build a Costco. Costco builds and then they hire people. So that statement to me is just really odd, at least in my mind, and maybe I interpret it wrong, but it's kind of like the chicken, if we build it, they will come. Well, they're saying, well, if we come, they'll build it. And I don't know. We have to create the incentives for businesses to come. But on a fair scale, too. I mean, I'm pro small business. And I think, you look at a lot of these huge companies, they'll get $5, $6, $8 million for a project because they're going to create 100 jobs. What if we took that $8 million and said, well, okay, we're going to start a fund. Anybody who has 1 or 2 employees can sign up for it. We'll give you 10, 15 grand for what you think you need in the hopes that you're going to hire one person. And what if we did that every year? All of a sudden, you get those little apples. You get those little places that were nothing. And all of a sudden, 5 years later, they got 30, 40 employees. And if you multiply that statewide, all of a sudden, that $8 million that created 120 jobs, it could have created thousands. Some are going to fail. Some are going to do better. But I think that way, too, we need to improve small business, get more people involved in being small business owners, but also give them opportunity to expand and not tighten, put the noose around them. They don't have as much ability to legislate and have lobbyists to help them. And I think that's something I would like to see changed.
Anybody want to follow up quick? Otherwise, we got about 1 minute.
Sorry, I kind of rattle on, I guess.
That's fine. Just to maybe tell us why you're a better choice than the incumbent, how you would be a different lawmaker than the incumbent.
I think anybody who's had a job for 40 years, I don't know that complacency is the right word, but you begin to feel that things are the way they are. They've always been this way. And I think one thing that I can bring to the table is I may be running under the Republican Party, but I'm a normal everyday guy, and in my opinion in running business, I mean, I couldn't run around a business screaming and hollering and just saying my way or the highway. You'd end up with no employees and no customers, and my viewpoint is discussion. And that might be a lot of how Mary was. I mean, I don't know everything Mary's done for 40 years. But I think people are ready for change. I mean, she was elected in 1976. It is a new world, it's a new time. Not that this has any justification of anybody's ability to go into the future, but if you Google her online, there's nothing. She doesn't have a web page, she doesn't have a Facebook page, she doesn't have any way that she communicates with her constituents at the level that we communicate nowadays. And I think it's just time for that difference and that change. And I personally find it hard to believe that Mary won't still be heavily involved in our community. It's her life, it's what she does.
Sure.
And I've talked to her numerous times. She's invited me over for coffee numerous times. I mean, I think she was surprised that I talked to her like I talked to you. I mean, I'm not in here to slander. I am really, really burnt out of the slandering and the let's pick on a guy because of the color of his shoes, and that's how I should win. I think politicians should win on this conversation, data and facts. How are you going to move forward? I could care less if you have long hair or one eye. As long as you can talk and have a good conversation, let's move forward. And that's why I think, honestly, I think I'm a good replacement for Mary. I'm not trying to take what they feel is this extreme left position and make it extreme right. I just want to bring the district forward, and that's my opinion. So,
Thanks, Tim.
yeah, thanks guys. I really appreciate it. It was an honor. So.